Chairman Franks, Ranking Member Cohen, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me to testify before your subcommittee during this hearing on the ultimate civil right, examining the Hyde Amendment and Born Alive Infants Protection Act. My name is Genevieve Plaster, and I'm a senior policy analyst for the Charlotte Lozier Institute, a research and education resource in Washington, D.C. Today, I will focus on the Hyde Amendment and its measurable impact over the past 40 years. The Hyde Amendment is an appropriations rider that prohibits the use of federal funds for elective abortion or for health benefits that cover elective abortion. As a rider, it is not a permanent law, but it has been passed with bipartisan support in every federal funding bill since 1976. Amidst legal challenges in its early years, the Hyde Amendment was reaffirmed as constitutional in 1980 by the U.S. Supreme Court in Harris v. McRae. Though a financial policy, the most important measurement of the Hyde Amendment's real-world effects has not been dollars saved, but lives saved. By saying that the Hyde Amendment has saved lives, I am referring to the prevented abortions due to women deciding to continue their pregnancies and give birth to their children in the absence of federal funding. More than 20 peer-reviewed studies published in academic journals have found a reduction in abortion rates following the enactment of the Hyde Amendment or other similar laws. Numerous studies also examining state data show not only the abortion rate decreased, but that the birth rate has increased. In fact, the Guttmacher Institute, formerly Planned Parenthood's research arm, which in prior years received millions of funding from the business after still splitting with them, conducted its own literature review on the impact of the Hyde Amendment on abortion rates in 2009. Because the decline in abortion was so clear, even the study's authors were forced to acknowledge that, quote, the best studies found 18 to 37% of pregnancy that would have ended in Medicaid-funded abortion were carried to term when public funding was no longer available. We then rightly acknowledge that the Medicaid-funded births of these individuals are lives saved due to the Hyde Amendment. In a forthcoming study, the Charlotte Lozier Institute's associate scholar, Dr. Michael New, calculates the best estimate for how many lives have been saved by the Hyde Amendment. With a rigorous methodology, Dr. New identifies solid, appropriately designed studies that examine the decrease of abortion rates following the enactment of a public funding limitation. Finding the average of decrease to be 1.52, he applies this rate to state-specific data, namely the number of years and months that each state has had the implementation, as well as each state's abortion rate. The study's major conclusion is that the Hyde Amendment has saved more than 2 million lives since 1976. 2 million Americans. That's approximately the entire population of the city of Houston, the fourth largest city in the US. 2 million Americans is the entire population of the state of New Mexico. From another angle, the study also calculated that the Hyde Amendment saves approximately 60,000 lives each year. Among just the 7 states that each of you and your constituents call home, the Hyde Amendment has saved approximately 700,000 lives since its enactment. That is, in Arizona, 55,000 lives were saved. In Florida, 166. In Iowa, 33,000. In Ohio, 131,000. In Tennessee, 66,000. In Texas, the highest number of lives saved at nearly 250,000, 248,000. And finally, in New York, regretfully, no lives have been saved due to the Hyde Amendment because the state has had state-funded abortions since 1976 till today. This real-world impact bears repeating. In just these 7 states represented, 700,000 lives have been saved by the Hyde Amendment. From another perspective, CLI scholar Dr. New explains that we can also say 1 in 9 people born under Medicaid in a state that has a Medicaid-funded abortion, that does not have a Medicaid-funded abortion program, was saved thanks to the Hyde Amendment. Lest we lose sight of the qualitative reality of 2 million lives, let us consider a brief story of Claire, a young woman who experienced an unplanned pregnancy at age 17. And in a recent news article, it was just published the other week, she said that at that time, I felt hopeless and alone. She explained that if Medicaid funding for an abortion had been available to her, it would have been very tempting to go ahead and have that abortion. Instead, she reached out for support, was accompanied to a pregnancy care center where she saw the first ultrasound of her young son and decided to continue this pregnancy. Now, a year later, Claire reflects, "I don't know what I would do without him. That's my baby." Of the 2 million lives saved by the Hyde Amendment, one can only wonder how many other of the mothers are in the similar situation. In conclusion, the Hyde Amendment has enjoyed bipartisan support for 40 years, was reaffirmed as constitutional since in 1980, enjoys support from nearly 7 in 10 Americans, including even 51% of those who identify as pro-choice, 44% of those who are Democrats, 65% of African Americans, 61% of Latinos, and finally, and most importantly, has saved an estimated 2 million lives. For these compelling reasons, the protective language of the Hyde Amendment should not only be retained as enforced policy, but should also be codified as permanent law. Thank you for inviting me to testify today.